The tension around Benjamin's mansion continued to grow, like an invisible thread that stretched and threatened to snap at any moment. Despite the heightened security measures and Arthur's constant presence, there was a lingering feeling that Matthias was just waiting for the right moment to act. Benjamin, Livia and Arthur were on high alert, but they knew that the situation would require more than simple surveillance. One particularly quiet morning, Benjamin found a mysterious envelope in the mailbox. It was unusual, as almost no one other than his close friends and service providers knew where he lived. Upon opening the envelope, Benjamin found a handwritten letter, with words that seemed to be a last warning. "It doesn't have to end like this. All I want is what belongs to me. The choice is yours, Livia." Benjamin frowned as he read the threatening words. He immediately took the letter inside, calling Livia and Arthur so they could evaluate it together. Upon seeing the letter, Livia felt her blood run cold. Matthew was clearly growing impatient, and his threats were becoming more and more direct. Arthur took the letter and examined it carefully. "This is more than a veiled threat," he said, with a tone of concern. "He's trying to manipulate you, Livia. You're playing with your emotions." Livia nodded, trying to remain calm, but it was difficult not to feel the impact of Matthias' words. She knew he was playing dirty, trying to exploit her emotionally to get what he wanted. But at the same time, I felt the weight of continually being on the defensive, not knowing what Matthew's next move would be. Benjamin, determined not to let Livia face this alone, suggested that they increase communication with the police. "We're past the point of expecting him to give up," Benjamin said firmly. "We need to make sure he knows we're ready for anything he tries." Arthur agreed, and together they decided to increase the level of protection and report the letter to the authorities. The police, upon receiving the report from Benjamin and Livia, reported that they would intensify surveillance in the area and that Matthias was now officially on the monitoring list, with warrants ready to be executed if he violated any laws or made a suspicious movement. Despite the actions taken, the atmosphere inside the mansion remained tense. Every unusual noise, every car that slowly passed down the street, seemed like a potential sign of danger. Livia did her best to maintain her routine, but Benjamin saw the concern reflected in her eyes, even when she tried to hide it. One afternoon, while Benjamin and Livia were working together in the garden, Arthur received an urgent call. He answered quickly, and his expression immediately became serious. "We have a problem," he said, after hanging up. "Matthew is trying to get closer to Julio. He's trying to use your brother as a way to pressure her." Livia turned pale when she heard this. Julius was her greatest vulnerability, the only person she would sacrifice everything to protect. The idea of Matthias trying to get closer to Julio was unbearable. "No, he can't do this," she said, feeling anger and fear mix. "Julio has nothing to do with this." Arthur quickly assured Livia that he would contact Julio's security to ensure he was protected. Benjamin, in turn, tried to comfort Livia, reminding her that they were one step ahead and ready to act. But even with these assurances, the feeling of vulnerability was overwhelming. "We need to think of a way to take away Matthew's power over you," Benjamin said, as they sat in the room, trying to figure out their next steps. "If he can no longer manipulate you emotionally, he will lose the advantage." Livia agreed, but knew that was easier said than done. "Matthew knows how to squeeze my weak spots," she confessed. "He knows he would do anything for Julio. But I need to be stronger than that." Arthur suggested that they gather all the evidence possible about Matthias' actions, not just the direct threats, but also his attempts at emotional manipulation. "If we can build a solid case against him, we can use the law to our advantage in a more forceful way," he explained. Livia and Benjamin spent hours organizing documents, call records, and everything that could be useful. It was meticulous work, but also a way for Livia to feel like she was regaining control over her life. With each page she reviewed, she felt more prepared to face Matthew and finally put an end to his reign of terror. As night approached, the feeling of siege intensified. But there was also a growing sense of determination between them. Benjamin, seeing Livia's tireless effort, knew that she was closer than ever to freeing herself from the bonds of the past. And he was ready to support every step of that process, no matter what it took. That night, as he closed the mansion's doors and ensured that all security measures were in place, Benjamin felt a renewed calm. He knew the path would still be difficult, but the unity and courage he saw in Livia made him believe that the end of that battle was finally in sight. As they prepared for another night of uncertainty, Benjamin looked at Livia and smiled. "We're almost there," he said, with conviction. And when this is all over, I know you will have the future you deserve. Livia returned the smile, feeling stronger next to Benjamin. Thank you, Mr. Benjamin, for everything. And so, as the noose closed around Matthias, they prepared for the outcome they knew was approaching, confident that together, they could overcome any obstacle. The cold wind blew in the morning, bringing with it an omen of change. Benjamin and Livia knew that the confrontation with Matthias was inevitable. The veiled threats had turned into increasingly bold actions, and the attempt to involve Julio was the limit for both. The mansion's security was reinforced, and Arthur was always present, monitoring every suspicious movement. However, the tension was palpable, and everyone was aware that something big was coming. While they were reviewing the latest preparations to protect themselves from any attempted invasion or intimidation, Arthur's phone rang. He answered quickly, and his face hardened when he heard the words on the other end. "Matthew is moving," he said, hanging up. "He was seen on the outskirts of town, and it looks like he's trying to rally support for something bigger." Livia closed her eyes for a moment, taking deep breaths to remain calm. The thought of Matthew coming into her life again filled her with anger and frustration, but she knew she needed to keep a cool head. "What do we do now?" she asked, turning her determined gaze to Arthur and Benjamin. "We need to face him head-on," Arthur said firmly. "There's no point in just reacting. We need to step forward and show that we are ready for anything he tries." Benjamin agreed, but knew it meant leaving the safety of the mansion and confronting Matthew on open ground. He looked at Livia, seeking the same determination he had maintained until then. "Livia, this is your decision. If you're ready, let's go together." Livia nodded, her eyes shining with fierce resolve. "I'm ready. I'm not running away anymore." With the plan drawn up, they decided to act quickly. Arthur contacted the police to ensure they would have support during the meeting with Matthias. It was a calculated risk, but they knew the best defense was a firm attack. The afternoon was just beginning when the group left the mansion, heading to the place where Matthias had last been seen. When they arrived, the place seemed deserted, but there was a tension in the air that indicated Matthias was nearby. Arthur remained alert, observing every detail around him while Benjamin and Livia got out of the car. They didn't have to wait long. Within a few minutes, Matthias appeared, coming out of a shadowed corner, with his gaze fixed on Livia. "So you finally decided to face me," said Matthias, his voice thick with contempt. He was thinner than Livia remembered, with a tired and desperate appearance. But there was still that manipulative gleam in his eyes, that same ability to play on people's emotions. "This ends now, Matthias," replied Livia, keeping her voice firm. "You will no longer control my life." Matthias laughed, a dry, joyless sound. "Do you think you can just escape everything? After everything we've been through, after everything I've done for you?" He took a step forward, but Arthur moved quickly, placing himself between Matthias and Livia. "That's a warning, Matthew," said Arthur, in a serious and threatening tone. "You are surrounded. The police are already aware of everything, and any movement by you will be considered a direct threat." Matthias hesitated, his eyes passing from Arthur to Livia and then to Benjamin, who observed everything in silence, but with a firm and protective posture. He knew Matthias was unpredictable, but he also knew that, at that moment, they had the advantage. "You don't understand, Livia," continued Matthias, now with an almost pleading tone. "I need you. I don't have anyone else. All I'm asking for is a little help. You owe me this." Livia shook her head, refusing to fall for the manipulations she knew so well. "I don't owe you anything, Matthew. I've paid enough for what we've done. Now it's your turn to deal with your choices." Matthias opened his mouth to respond, but was interrupted by the sound of approaching sirens. The police arrived quickly, and officers got out of their cars, ready to intervene. Matthew looked around, realizing he was truly cornered. He took a step back, his face contorting with frustration and despair. "It's over, Matthew," Benjamin said, his voice low but firm. "There's nowhere left to run. The police officers approached, and Matthias finally raised his hands, surrendering without resistance. It was the end of a long and painful journey for Livia, but also the beginning of a new chapter, where she would no longer be haunted by the past. As Matthias was taken away, Livia felt a wave of relief that almost made her collapse. Benjamin was at her side, holding her hand firmly. "You did it," he said softly. "You freed yourself." Livia smiled, with tears in her eyes. "I couldn't have done it without you, Mr. Benjamin. Thank you for believing in me, even when I doubted myself." Arthur approached, patting Livia on the shoulder. "It was a team effort," he said, with a rare smile. "Now, it's time to move on." With Matthias out of the picture, Livia could finally begin to rebuild her life without the shadows of the past. Benjamin and Arthur remained by her side, ready to support whatever decision she made. As they returned to the mansion, Livia looked up at the sky, which was beginning to open up into a light blue, feeling lighter than ever. That night, the mansion was quieter than it had been in months. Benjamin and Livia sat on the balcony, watching the stars appear one by one. "This is the beginning of something new," said Benjamin, with a serene smile. Livia nodded, feeling peace finally settle in her heart. "Yes, it is. And I'm ready to live every moment." And so, with the past finally resolved, they prepared to face the future together, knowing that no matter what challenges came their way, they could always count on each other. With Matthias finally out of their lives, Livia felt as if a huge weight had been lifted from her shoulders. The mansion, which once seemed like a fortress surrounded by invisible threats, was now beginning to transform into a place of true peace. Benjamin, always by his side, had become more than a protector or friend, he was an anchor amid the turmoil he faced. The first days after the confrontation with Matthias were full of adjustments and reflections. Livia was still getting used to the idea of not having to look over her shoulder all the time. She began to value the little things, the sound of birds in the morning, the feeling of the sun warming her skin, and Julio's laugh when he came to visit. Benjamin continued to encourage her to resume activities that she had put aside because of constant fear. The garden, which flourished more and more under their care, became a living symbol of this new phase. One morning, while they were planting new flowers in the orchard, Livia turned to Benjamin with a smile he hadn't seen in a while. "You know, Mr. Benjamin, I never thought I could get through all this. But here I am, and I'm really happy." Benjamin smiled back, carefully placing a sapling on the ground. "Life always gives us a chance to start over, Livia. And you deserve all the good things to come." Livia nodded, feeling the sincerity in Benjamin's words. She knew she still had a long way to go, but with his support, she felt stronger than ever. The days that followed were filled with new routines, without the weight of Matthew's threats. Livia began thinking about plans for the future, such as resuming her studies and expanding her skills as a caregiver. During one of these quiet mornings, Benjamin suggested something that took Livia by surprise. "What if you considered opening a small business of your own?" he asked, as they organized the gardening tools. "You have an incredible talent for caring for people, and I'm sure many would benefit from this." Livia stopped, surprised by the idea. She had never considered this possibility, but now that Benjamin mentioned it, it made sense. She loved helping people, and working as a caregiver gave her a purpose beyond her daily duties. The idea of creating something of her own, where she could offer support and care to anyone who needed it, lit a new flame of enthusiasm within her. "Do you think I could do it?" Livia asked, a gleam of hope in her eyes. Benjamin laughed, a warm, comforting sound. "I have no doubts, Livia. And you don't have to do it alone. I will be here to help with whatever you need." With this new perspective, Livia began planning her next step. She and Benjamin spent hours brainstorming ideas, researching what it would take to start a small home care service. Arthur, always willing to help, offered his knowledge to guide them on the legal and operational parts of the business. Little by little, the plan took shape. Livia decided to start small, offering her services to families in the neighborhood who needed support to care for the elderly or people with special needs. She knew it would be challenging work, but she also knew she had a rich experience, not only because of the difficulties she had faced with Matthias, but also because of the strength she had found in caring for Benjamin. With the support of Benjamin and Arthur, Livia took her first steps as a businesswoman. They transformed one of the rooms in the mansion into a small office, where Livia could manage orders and coordinate her visits. Benjamin helped with outreach, using his network of contacts to spread the word that a new, dedicated, trustworthy caregiver was available. Julio, excited about his sister's new project, offered to help with the technological part, creating a simple website to promote Livia's services and facilitate contact with potential clients. Benjamin's family and friends also got involved, ensuring that Livia had all the support she needed to get started. The community response was quick and positive. Within a few weeks, Livia already had her first clients, and the routine that was previously marked by insecurity was now full of activities and new challenges. Each day brought a new opportunity to make a difference in someone's life, and Livia embraced each one of them with a heart full of gratitude. As Livia's business grew, the friendship between her and Benjamin deepened even further. They continued to garden together, taking advantage of quiet afternoons to talk about life, plans for the future and the lessons they learned along the way. For Benjamin, seeing Livia bloom was like watching a new spring blossom before his eyes. He felt fulfilled knowing that he had contributed, in some way, to her happiness. And so, the days at the mansion continued with new energy. The past, which once seemed like a constant shadow, was now just a distant memory. Livia, Benjamin and Arthur became an inseparable team, united by the desire to build something positive and lasting. That night, as they watched the sunset from the balcony, Benjamin looked at Livia and said, "You're doing an amazing job, Livia. I am very proud of you." Livia smiled, with a full heart. "Thank you, Mr. Benjamin. I wouldn't have gotten this far without you." Benjamin shook his head, smiling. "You got here because you are strong and determined. I was just a companion on the journey." Livia looked at the horizon, feeling a deep peace. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't running away from anything, but rather running toward a future she was building for herself. And, with Benjamin, she knew she could face anything. As the days turned into weeks, Livia's new business began to prosper in ways she never imagined. With Benjamin and Arthur's constant support, demands for her services increased, and she soon realized she would need to expand her operation. It was a good problem to have, but it also brought new challenges. Livia found herself faced with the need to hire more people to help her. She wanted to ensure that the level of care and attention she offered to each client was maintained, and to do so, she would need to find people with the same commitment and dedication that she had. With the help of Benjamin, who used his business experience to guide her, Livia began interviewing candidates and assembling a small team of caregivers. While conducting the interviews at his home, Benjamin couldn't help but smile when he saw Livia's growth. He remembered the difficult days, when Livia could barely think about the future, and now she was leading her own business, with confidence and purpose. For him, it was like seeing a dream taking shape before his eyes. One day, after a long afternoon of interviews, Livia and Benjamin sat on the balcony to relax and reflect on everything that had happened. "I never imagined we would get here so quickly," said Livia, with a mix of tiredness and satisfaction. "It seems like there is so much to do, but there are also so many possibilities." Benjamin nodded, looking at the flower garden that now symbolized everything they had overcome together. "You're just getting started, Livia. And with every step, you're creating something that really matters. Something that makes a difference." As they continued talking, Livia shared her plans to expand further, perhaps opening a small clinic or community space for seniors where they could socialize and participate in activities that keep their minds and bodies active. It was an ambitious vision, but Livia was full of ideas and energy to make it a reality. "And you, Mr. Benjamin? What do you think about joining me in this new venture?" Livia asked with a mischievous smile, already imagining Benjamin as part of the next big project. Benjamin laughed, shaking his head. "Ah, Livia, I've been retired for a long time. But I must admit it is tempting. Who knows, I could be an occasional consultant," he replied, winking at Livia. As they laughed together, Benjamin realized something important. He, too, was experiencing a rebirth in his life. Involvement in Livia's plans and the new energy she brought to his routine made Benjamin feel useful and invigorated in a way he hadn't felt since Rebecca was gone. He knew that although his contribution was modest, being by Livia's side and supporting her gave a new purpose to his days. One afternoon, Benjamin received a call from an old friend he hadn't seen in years. They had lost contact after Benjamin retired from the business world, but the news that he was involved in Livia's new venture sparked the interest of his friend, who was now an investor in social projects. "I heard you're helping put together something special," the friend said over the phone. "I would like to know more about this. Who knows, maybe we can collaborate in some way." Benjamin, surprised by the unexpected opportunity, spoke with Livia about the possibility of seeking external investment to further expand the business. Livia, although hesitant at first, saw the potential in the idea. With a larger support network, they could reach more people and offer even better services. They arranged a meeting with Benjamin's friend, who was impressed by Livia's passion and dedication. At the end of the conversation, he committed to providing an initial investment to help expand the operation. It was a moment of celebration, and Livia felt more motivated than ever to move forward. With the additional resources, Livia began implementing the changes she had planned. She rented a small space in the neighborhood, transforming it into a community center for seniors, where she offered recreational activities, crafts classes, and even light exercise sessions. The place quickly became a meeting point for the community, a refuge where people could feel valued and cared for. Benjamin visited the center regularly, always at Livia's side, helping where he could and enjoying the company of the people who frequented the space. He had become a well-known and respected figure in the center, and his friendship with Livia was an inspiring example for everyone. As the months passed, the center flourished, and Livia found herself more fulfilled than she ever imagined. She continued to grow, not just as a businesswoman, but as a person, learning to balance professional responsibilities with the importance of taking care of herself and her personal relationships. And Benjamin, who had started as a client in need of care, became an invaluable partner and constant source of support. One quiet afternoon, as they watched the elderly playing chess and painting in watercolors in the center's garden, Livia turned to Benjamin and said, "Look at all this. Doesn't it feel like a dream?" Benjamin smiled, proud of what they had built. "Yes, it seems. But you made it come true, Livia. And this is just the beginning." Livia nodded, her heart full of hope and gratitude. She knew that with Benjamin by her side, there was no limit to what they could achieve. And together, they continued to expand their horizons, turning challenges into opportunities and dreams into realities, one step at a time. The community center founded by Livia quickly became a point of light in the community. The place, which had started as a small project, was now full of life, laughter and stories of people who found a refuge of welcome and friendship there. Each day brought a new activity, and Benjamin, always present, was a constant figure of support and inspiration for all attendees. As Livia and her team expanded the reach of their services, she realized she was connecting with people in ways she never imagined. There was something magical about seeing seniors' eyes light up as they learned something new or simply shared their experiences with others. It was a constant reminder of why she started this project, to create a space where every person could feel valued and heard. During one of the activity sessions in the garden, a lady named Helena caught Livia's attention. Helena was a new visitor, a woman in her early 70s with a warm smile and contagious energy. She approached Livia, thanking her for the wonderful work she was doing. "You brought life to this place, dear," said Helena, holding Livia's hands. "And it's not just for others, but for us too. Every day here is a gift. Livia smiled, touched by Helena's words. Thank you, Donna Helena. But it's you and everyone here that makes this place special. I just took the first step. Helena nodded, her eyes shining with joy. Still, you did something that many only dream of doing. And for that, we are all grateful. Benjamin, who was sitting next to Helena, heard the conversation and added, Livia has this gift of turning dreams into reality. And that's why we're all here. The connection between Livia and the center's visitors was genuine, and this welcoming atmosphere attracted not only elderly people, but also young volunteers who wanted to make a difference in the community. One of these young people was Raphael, a psychology student who offered to help with integration and occupational therapy activities. Raphael quickly became a key player at the center, bringing new ideas and a modern approach to elderly care. Raphael and Livia formed a productive partnership, and their ideas complemented each other perfectly. Together, they introduced memory workshops, basic technology classes for seniors, and even music sessions that quickly became the highlight of the week. Benjamin, who loved music, became actively involved in these activities, playing his guitar while others sang or simply listened. On one of these musical afternoons, Livia had an exciting surprise. As she watched Benjamin play a soft melody, she saw Helena begin to sing an old song that she herself remembered from her childhood. Others joined in, and soon the garden was full of voices, each bringing their own story to the song. Livia stood still, absorbing the moment, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment and happiness. After the session, Helena approached Livia with tears in her eyes. "You brought this to us," she said, moved. "I haven't sung like that in a long time. You gave us back something we thought we lost." Livia hugged Helena, feeling grateful for being part of that journey. "It's a privilege to be here with all of you," he replied, his voice breaking. As the center continued to flourish, Livia began receiving visits from other healthcare professionals interested in learning about her working model. They came from other cities, attracted by news of the project's success. Livia, although surprised by the recognition, saw it as an opportunity to further spread the positive impact she was creating. She and Benjamin participated in meetings and lectures, sharing their experiences and inspiring other communities to create similar spaces. Livia's name began to be associated with innovation in elderly care, and her approach centered on empathy and human value became an example to be followed. One of these visits brought a man who would change Livia's trajectory once again. Eduardo, a businessman in the health sector, visited the center on the recommendation of a friend. He was impressed by what he saw, not just by the structure, but by the atmosphere of respect and joy that permeated the place. He approached Livia at the end of the day, expressing his interest in supporting the expansion of the project to other regions. "I see here something that the world needs," said Eduardo, with a sincere smile. "And I believe that, with the right support, we can bring this initiative to many more people." Livia, although excited about the possibility, remained cautious. She knew that expanding was a big step, and wanted to ensure that the heart of the project didn't get lost along the way. Eduardo, noticing her hesitation, assured that any expansion would be done respecting Livia's values and vision. Benjamin, who followed the conversation, gave his vote of confidence. "Eduardo, Livia is a woman of vision and principles. And that's what makes this place what it is. I'm sure that together you can do something incredible." With Benjamin's encouragement and Eduardo's proposal, Livia began to seriously consider expansion. She knew it would be a challenge, but she also knew that each new center would mean more people served, more stories told, and more lives touched. And that, for Livia, was the true measure of success. In the days that followed, Livia, Benjamin, and now Eduardo, began to outline plans for the next step. There was a lot to do, but the excitement was palpable. They were not just expanding a business, but expanding a movement of care and empathy that could transform lives wherever it went. As the sun set over the center's garden, Livia looked at Benjamin with gratitude. This all started with a simple idea. And now, we are here. Benjamin smiled, placing his hand on Livia's shoulder. The best things start like this. And I'm sure the best is yet to come. And with this renewed confidence, Livia moved forward, ready to face the challenges and embrace the opportunities that came with each new day, alongside the people who transformed her life and who were now part of a promising future full of possibilities. With the new expansion plan underway, Livia felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. The partnership with Eduardo brought a new dimension to his project, and the idea of replicating the community center model in other cities seemed like a dream come true. However, with expansion came challenges that Livia would need to face with determination and creativity. In the first months, Livia's team worked tirelessly to structure the expansion. Eduardo, with his experience in management and business, was a key player in creating a solid foundation for growth. He brought new contacts, interested investors, and helped to outline a strategic plan that would guarantee the quality and sustainability of the new centers. However, Livia was determined to keep the heart of her project intact, care and respect for each individual served. During a meeting with the team, Livia highlighted the importance of not losing sight of the original purpose. It's not just about opening more centers, she said, her voice firm. It's about creating spaces where each person feels valued and cared for. This is our difference, and this cannot be lost. Eduardo agreed, recognizing Livia's commitment to her principles. We will ensure that each new center reflects the essence of what you built here, Livia. That is our commitment. As operations to open the next center began, Livia was faced with a series of logistical and administrative issues that required quick and often complex decisions. She spent long hours reviewing contracts, choosing appropriate locations and interviewing potential managers who would be responsible for leading the new centers. The pressure was great, and Livia felt the weight of responsibility in each decision. Benjamin, always present, offered wise advice and a friendly shoulder in the most difficult times. You're doing an incredible job, Livia, he often said. Remember that it's normal to feel overwhelmed. The important thing is to stay true to what you believe in. One of the biggest challenges arose when one of the new center's construction teams encountered complications with local permits, delaying the schedule and generating additional costs. Eduardo and Livia had to redouble their efforts to overcome bureaucratic problems, keeping the team motivated and the project moving. It was a constant test of resilience, but each obstacle overcome strengthened everyone's commitment to the success of the project. Livia also faced personal challenges. With the accelerated pace of work, she found herself increasingly separated from Julio, who continued to need her presence and support. One afternoon, during a brief break at the office, Livia called her brother, missing him in her routine. "I'm sorry for not being as present, Julio," she said, with a tone of concern. "Things are busier than I imagined." Julio, always understanding, responded with a smile that Livia could almost see on the phone. "I know you're doing something amazing, sis. I'm proud of you. And don't worry, I'm fine. Just make sure you don't forget to take care of yourself too." Julio's words remained in Livia's mind for the next few days. She knew she would need to find a better balance between her professional and personal responsibilities. With the support of Benjamin and Eduardo, Livia began to delegate more tasks, trusting her team to maintain the high standards she had established. It was an exercise in trust and leadership, but also a necessary step to ensure she could continue to grow without completely burning out. As the first new centers opened their doors, the fruits of their hard work began to appear. The locations quickly came alive with activity, laughter, and the same positive energy that had made the original center a success. Feedback from participants and their families was extremely positive, reinforcing that Livia was on the right path. On a visit to the new center in a neighboring city, Livia was welcomed with flowers and applause. The elderly, many of whom were already involved in the activities, expressed their gratitude for having a place where they felt welcomed and respected. Livia, moved, gave a short speech, thanking everyone for their support and reaffirming her commitment to each person present. Benjamin, who accompanied Livia on the visit, watched with pride as she spoke. "You really changed these people's lives, Livia," he said later, as they walked through the new center. "And that's something no one can take away from you." Livia smiled, feeling more confident than ever. "I think we've changed, Mr. Benjamin. All of this is the result of joint work." As the sun set over the new center, Livia felt that she was finally reaping the rewards of her effort and dedication. The challenges, although constant, had shaped a stronger and more determined leader. And with Benjamin by her side, she knew she could continue to grow, expand, and inspire others to believe in their own dreams. Back at the mansion, while drinking tea on the balcony, Livia and Benjamin reflected on the path they had taken. "You know, Mr. Benjamin, all of this makes me realize how life is full of possibilities," said Livia, looking at the garden that they took care of so much. "Yes, Livia. And you are enjoying every single one of them," replied Benjamin with a smile. "I'm very proud of you." And so, with the horizon expanding before them, Livia and Benjamin continued to walk together, ready to embrace each new challenge and opportunity, certain that the future held even more adventures and achievements. With the success of the new community centers, Livia felt that she was experiencing one of the most rewarding moments of her life. However, rapid growth brought new challenges that she was still learning to manage. The expansion of the project, which initially seemed just a matter of effort and dedication, turned out to be a complex territory, where difficult decisions and unexpected twists and turns would test his leadership capacity. Everything seemed to be going well until, one gray morning, Livia received an urgent call from one of the newly opened centers. One of the caregivers she had hired to run the place was facing neglect charges. There were rumors that care for the elderly was not being maintained to the standards that Livia demanded, and a formal complaint had been filed by one of the families. Livia felt her stomach turn as she listened to the details. This wasn't just an operational problem, it was a direct threat to the reputation and essence of everything she had built. Immediately, Livia got in the car and drove to the center in question, with Benjamin by her side to offer support. Along the way, she mentally reviewed the hiring and training processes, trying to identify where she could have gone wrong. Benjamin, noticing the growing tension, tried to reassure her. "You are not alone in this, Livia. Let's find out what happened and resolve it as best we can." Upon arriving at the center, Livia was greeted by the local manager, who was clearly shaken. The accused caregiver, a young woman named Mariana, appeared nervous and anxious as she explained her version of events. According to her, the problems arose due to a lack of staff and excessive responsibilities that had not been initially foreseen. Mariana assured that there was never any intention to neglect anyone, but that the pressure of work had created failures that she was unable to manage alone. Livia listened carefully, but knew she needed more information before making any decision. She met with the family of the elderly person who made the complaint and sought to understand all their concerns. The meeting was tense, but Livia remained firm and empathetic, ensuring that she would take the situation very seriously and that she would take all necessary measures to correct the problem. While Benjamin spoke to some of the regulars to understand their perception of the care they received, Livia gathered her team and reinforced the importance of service standards. She made it clear that each center should reflect the values with which she had started the project and that any deviation would be treated with the utmost seriousness. The communication was direct, but also with a supportive tone. She wanted everyone to know that, despite the challenges, they were all on this journey together. After the intense day of meetings and discussions, Livia returned to the mansion, feeling exhausted and worried. Benjamin, noticing his friend's tiredness, prepared tea and suggested that they talk about the lessons learned that day. "It's easy to get lost in the details when you grow up quickly, Livia. But the important thing is that you are here, taking care and correcting course when necessary." Livia nodded, grateful for Benjamin's unwavering support. "I think I'm learning that leadership is much more than just planning and executing. It's about dealing with people, with mistakes, and with the trust that others place in you. Over the next few days, Livia made difficult decisions, including completely reviewing internal processes and hiring additional staff to ensure each caregiver had the support they needed. Mariana was guided and monitored closely, and the teams received additional training to reinforce quality standards. Livia also increased her presence in the centers, dedicating more time to visits and direct interactions with staff and visitors. It was his way of reaffirming his commitment to care and excellence. Over time, the situation stabilized, and the centers resumed their activities with more vigor and attention. The family that had registered the complaint recognized Livia's efforts to resolve the problems and expressed their gratitude for the way everything was handled. Livia felt immense relief when she realized that, despite the setbacks, she was managing to keep the essence of the project intact. As operations returned to normal, Livia reflected on the lessons she had learned. She knew that, even with all the preparation and dedication, unexpected challenges were part of the path. More than ever, she understood the importance of trusting her team, communicating clearly and always being willing to learn from each experience, good or bad. One afternoon, while Livia was reviewing the reports in the mansion's office, Benjamin walked in with a satisfied look. "You're doing a great job, Livia. And people are noticing. I've received some messages of support from the community, praising how you've handled all of this." Livia smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest. "It's good to know we're on the right track, Mr. Benjamin. But there is still a lot to do." Benjamin nodded, sitting down next to her. "And you are more than ready for this. Remember, leadership is not about never failing, but about how you pick yourself up and correct course when necessary." With Benjamin's words in mind, Livia felt stronger. She knew the road ahead would not be without difficulties, but she also knew that each challenge was an opportunity to grow and become a better leader. And with Benjamin by her side, she was ready to face any upheaval that came, always focusing on what really mattered, people. After overcoming the incident of neglect at the center, Livia decided to further strengthen her connection with the people who formed the heart of her project, the caregivers and those who frequent the centers. She knew that to ensure that each location maintained the quality standards she valued, she would need to be more present, listen more and learn from each person involved. Thus, Livia began a series of regular visits to each of the centers, without prior notice, to see the daily operations up close and feel the environment. On one of these visits, Livia came across a caregiver named Clara, who was sitting with a group of elderly people, reading aloud a story that seemed to enchant everyone around her. Clara had a special way of connecting with people. His soft and engaging tone of voice made even the most distracted people pay attention. Livia observed the scene from afar, feeling a mixture of pride and relief. It was this type of care and attention that she wanted to spread throughout all the centers. After reading, Livia approached Clara and thanked her for the work she was doing. "You have a special gift, Clara. It's beautiful to see how everyone responds to you," said Livia, smiling. Clara, a little surprised by the direct approach, smiled shyly and thanked him, explaining that she worked as a caregiver because she believed that everyone deserved to be heard and cared for with dignity. This interaction reaffirmed to Livia that the success of her project depended not only on good practices and processes, but on the right people, with their hearts in the right place. She began spending more time recognizing and valuing caregivers who went above and beyond the basics, those who showed true empathy and commitment to the well-being of seniors. This recognition created a positive effect, increasing team morale and encouraging a culture of care and mutual respect. Meanwhile, Benjamin continued to be a constant presence at Livia's side, participating in visits and offering his support. He was the first to praise when he saw something good and the first to suggest improvements when necessary. During one of these visits, they met a man named Augusto, who had recently started attending the center. Augusto was a man in his 70s, with a shrewd look and a sharp mind, but who struggled with loneliness after the loss of his wife. Benjamin quickly connected with Augusto, finding in him a new friend and companion for long conversations about life, politics, and even football. Augusto began to stand out as a kind of informal leader among the regulars, organizing reading groups, discussions, and even small debates on current topics. He brought new energy to the center, and his presence became a point of reference for others. In a more personal conversation, Augusto confessed to Benjamin that, before visiting the center, he had lost a little of the will to live. The loss of his wife had left him feeling a deep emptiness, and he couldn't find the motivation to move on. "But this place," said Augusto, with a sincere smile, "has given me a new reason to wake up every morning. And that's something I didn't expect to find so late in life." Benjamin shared this conversation with Livia, highlighting how her work was creating not just a service, but a real impact on people's lives. Livia was deeply touched by Augusto's words and by the friendship he had formed with Benjamin. It was proof that, despite so many challenges, they were on the right path. However, the journey of growth continued to test Livia's limits. She began to realize that her own mental health and well-being were being sidelined in the never-ending quest to keep everything running smoothly. The long hours and constant demands took their toll, and Livia began to feel the weight of responsibility in a way she had never experienced before. Benjamin, always attentive, noticed the changes in Livia's behavior. She was more tired, less smiling and, at times, seemed distant, even when she was physically present. He knew that Livia needed a break, a moment to breathe and recharge, but he also knew that she was unlikely to stop on her own. One afternoon, Benjamin invited Livia for a walk in the park near the mansion, a place where they used to go when they needed to think or just enjoy nature. As they walked in silence, Benjamin finally broached the topic. "Livia, I see how dedicated you are, but I also see how much this is affecting you. You need to take care of yourself. What you're building is wonderful, but it's not worth it if you lose yourself in the process." Livia stopped, reflecting on Benjamin's words. She knew he was right, but it was hard for her to slow down, especially when there were so many people counting on her work. "I know, Mr. Benjamin," she said, with a sigh. "It's just, there's so much at stake, and I feel like I can't fail." Benjamin placed his hand on Livia's shoulder, looking into her eyes. "Livia, true success is not never failing, but learning and growing with each experience. You are doing your best, and that is enough. The people around you are here to support you, just as you support them." Benjamin's words resonated deeply with Livia. She realized that she needed to practice the same compassion towards herself that she always preached towards others. She decided right then and there to start delegating more responsibilities, trusting her team more and, most importantly, taking time to take care of herself. In the days that followed, Livia began to implement changes in her routine, prioritizing not only work, but also her well-being. She signed up for yoga classes, started spending more time with Julio, and set healthy limits on her work hours. Little by little, Livia found a new balance, feeling stronger and able to face challenges with a clear mind and a light heart. Benjamin, seeing the transformation, felt proud of Livia. He knew the journey wasn't easy, but he also knew she was growing with each step. And, with each new lesson, Livia became not only a better leader, but also a more complete and happy person. As Livia's project continued to flourish, the positive influence of the community centers spread to neighboring cities. The impact was visible not only in the smiles of seniors who found new purpose, but also in the families who now had a safe and welcoming place for their loved ones. Livia felt deep gratitude for everything she had achieved, but she also knew that it was important to never forget the roots of her work. One day, while reviewing plans to open a new center in a nearby city, Livia received an unexpected call. It was Eduardo, with a proposal that could take the project to an even higher level, a national network of community centers, with the support of investors interested in expanding the model throughout the country. Eduardo was excited, seeing the idea as an opportunity to multiply the impact they were already creating. However, upon hearing the proposal, Livia felt a pang of concern. Rapid growth was always a risk, and she feared that the project would lose its focus and essence when replicated on a large scale. Eduardo saw the potential for great success, but for Livia, the most important thing was to ensure that each new center maintained the welcoming and humanized spirit that she valued so much. Livia invited Eduardo to a meeting with the entire team, including Benjamin and Arthur, to discuss the pros and cons of the proposal. They spent hours debating possibilities, expansion strategies and, most importantly, ways to preserve what made the project unique. While Eduardo presented the numbers and projections, Livia kept the focus on the quality and experience of the visitors. Benjamin, always the voice of wisdom and balance, suggested they do a pilot project before any massive expansion. "Let's take it one step at a time," he said calmly. "We can start with a center in a new region and see how things develop. This way, we can adjust whatever is necessary without compromising what we have already built." Livia agreed with Benjamin's approach. She knew that to grow sustainably, she would need patience and attention to detail. Eduardo, although a little impatient, accepted the pilot plan as a good compromise, and together they began working on preparations to launch the first center outside the region where they had started. During the planning period, Livia also decided it was time to remember and honor the roots of her journey. She organized a small celebration at the original center, inviting everyone who was part of the journey, from the first caregivers to the elderly who followed the project from the beginning. It was a day of reunions and memories, with stories being shared and a lot of emotion in the air. Livia gave a brief speech, thanking everyone for their support and highlighting the importance of each person in the success of the project. "All of this is only possible because we are together," she said, her voice breaking. "Every smile, every conversation, every small gesture of care is what makes this place special. And that's what we want to bring to each new center." Benjamin, who was sitting in the front row, gave a standing ovation at the end of the speech, followed by everyone present. He knew how much that moment meant to Livia and was immensely proud of the path she had taken. It was a well-deserved recognition, the result of years of hard work, courage and, above all, love for people. That night, after the celebration, Livia and Benjamin sat on the mansion's balcony, reflecting on the day. The sky was full of stars, and the gentle breeze brought a feeling of tranquility. "You achieved something incredible, Livia," said Benjamin, looking up at the stars. "And I know that no matter how much you grow, your heart will always be in the right place." Livia smiled, feeling at peace. "Thank you, Mr. Benjamin. I think everything we do, in the end, comes back to who we are and what we believe. And having you by my side makes all the difference." Benjamin held Livia's hand, a simple gesture, but full of meaning. They had been through so much together, and here they were, ready for another chapter, another challenge. The journey wasn't over yet, but they were stronger, more united, and ready for whatever came. With the pilot phase underway, Livia dedicated herself to visiting the new center regularly, ensuring that every detail was in line with the values that underpinned the project. The first few weeks were challenging, but also full of learning. Livia adjusted procedures, trained teams and continued to maintain proximity to visitors, ensuring that they felt as welcomed as in the original centers. The community response was positive, and the new center soon became a success. Eduardo, impressed with the results, suggested that they start planning large-scale expansion. Livia, although excited, maintained her cautious stance. She knew that growth had to be managed carefully, and she was willing to take it step by step, respecting the pace she felt was right. While all this was happening, Benjamin remained by Livia's side, offering his wisdom and support. He helped her stay focused, remember her roots, and celebrate every small victory. For him, the most rewarding thing was seeing Livia grow not only as a leader, but as a person who made a difference in the world. On the last visit to the new pilot center, Benjamin made an observation that remained in Livia's mind. "You know, Livia, I think that the legacy you are building is something that goes far beyond walls and contracts. It's about the lives you touch, about the impact you leave on each person who passes by." That is the true legacy. Livia reflected on Benjamin's words and felt a wave of satisfaction. She knew there was much more to come, many challenges and opportunities, but she also knew she was on the right path. Alongside Benjamin, she was determined to continue growing, learning and honoring the roots of everything she had built. And so, with the horizon brighter than ever, Livia and Benjamin continued together, ready to embrace the future and transform even more lives with their work. The legacy they were building was just the beginning of something truly special, something that, as Benjamin said, went far beyond any initial dream. The following months were marked by an intense pace of work and new achievements for Livia and her team. With the success of the pilot project, the expansion of community centers began to take shape, and the dream of taking the model to other regions of the country seemed increasingly closer. Livia, with the support of Eduardo, Benjamin and the entire team, remained focused on ensuring that each new center reflected the care and dedication that were the foundation of her mission. However, as the project grew, Benjamin began to realize that his body was no longer keeping up with the same rhythm as before. The days at the mansion, which were previously full of activities and meetings, began to be interspersed with long periods of rest. Although he never complained, Livia noticed the subtle changes in Benjamin's disposition and knew he was dealing with something more serious than he let on. One afternoon, while they were resting on the balcony after a long meeting about the next steps of the expansion, Benjamin called Livia for a talk. He looked out at the garden, where so many of his important conversations had taken place, and took a deep breath before he began. "Livia, you know how proud I am of everything you have achieved. But I also need to be honest with you about something." Livia, sensing the seriousness in Benjamin's tone, held his hand and waited patiently. "What is it, Mr. Benjamin?" she asked, worried. Benjamin smiled softly, but there was a sadness in his eyes. "I'm getting older, Livia, and I feel like my body is telling me that it's time to slow down. I don't want you to worry, but I also don't want you to be unprepared. The time has come to think about what the future will be like without my constant presence." Livia felt a lump in her throat. Benjamin had been his mentor, friend and confidant since the beginning of his journey, and the idea of going without him was difficult to accept. She squeezed his hand tighter, fighting back the tears. "Mr. Benjamin, you will always be with me, one way or another. And no matter what happens, I will never forget everything you did for me." Benjamin smiled, with an expression of peace. "I know, Livia. And that's why I'm calm. Watching you grow, seeing the impact you are creating, has given me a joy I didn't expect to find at this stage in life. But now, I want you to continue the journey with confidence, knowing that you have everything you need to move forward." In the days that followed, Livia made a point of spending more time with Benjamin, enjoying every moment with him. They revisited memories, laughed at old stories, and continued to garden as they had from the beginning. Livia knew that their time together was precious, and she valued every moment. As Benjamin's health condition worsened, Livia reorganized her priorities. She entrusted more responsibilities to Eduardo and the team, so that she could be more present in the mansion. Visits to the doctor became more frequent, and Benjamin, always optimistic, tried to maintain a good mood, even on the most difficult days. One afternoon, while Benjamin was resting in his room, Livia found an envelope on his office desk. It was a handwritten letter, with her name at the top. With her heart racing, Livia opened the envelope and began to read. In the letter, Benjamin expressed all the pride and love he felt for her, remembering the first days, the challenges and all the victories they had achieved together. "Livia," the letter said, "you brought light and hope into my life in ways I never could have imagined. You are more than capable of carrying this legacy forward, and I know that wherever I am, I will be rooting for you. Keep being the amazing person you are, and never forget what you mean to so many people, including me." Livia's tears flowed freely as she finished reading. That letter was a gift, a reminder that Benjamin would always be with her, in spirit and in every part of the project they had built together. The following month, Benjamin passed away peacefully at his home, surrounded by friends and Livia, who held his hand until the last moment. The farewell was painful, but also full of gratitude. During the funeral, Livia gave an emotional speech, highlighting Benjamin's kindness and wisdom, and how he had impacted the lives of everyone around him. "Benjamin wasn't just my friend," she said, her voice breaking. "He was a mentor, an inspiration, and someone who believed in me when I had doubts. This project, and everything it represents, is part of his legacy, and I promise to continue honoring that every day." After the funeral, Livia dedicated herself even more to her work, not as an escape, but as a way to keep Benjamin's memory alive. She knew he would have wanted her to keep moving forward, carrying forward the dream they shared. And with each new center opened, with each new smile from an elderly person who found comfort in the spaces they created, Livia felt Benjamin's presence by her side, like a silent guide who encouraged her to move forward. In the months that followed, Livia consolidated the expansion of community centers, now called Fundação Benjamin de Convivência e Trabalho, in honor of the friend who had meant so much to her. The foundation grew, bringing the values of care, respect, and empathy to even more people. And so, with Benjamin's legacy guiding her steps, Livia continued building a bright future, aware that the true measure of success was not just the growth of the centers, but the profound and positive impact they had on the lives of each person they touched.